Hello everyone. I'm here to talk about anti-anxiety DH, specifically digital pedagogy in the academic library. Before I begin, I am curious to know how many of you in the audience are librarians. Okay, many. And how many of you in your work have a library liaison that you work with? Okay, a few of you. Very good. Wonderful. So let's move forward here. So I'm here to discuss the use of library resources for digital pedagogy and how they can support, small-scale anti-anxiety digital humanities work. I start with trying to define digital pedagogy. There are probably as many definitions as there are people who implement or apply digital pedagogy, but I like to contrast these two definitions. The first is from Brian Croxall at Brown University, who defines digital pedagogy as the use of electronic elements to enhance or to change the experience of education, which is a rather broad definition. It can make you feel good, like we're all doing digital pedagogy every day at work. The second definition comes from the Digital Pedagogy Lab, and I really like this definition. It pulls in the critical pedagogy. So they define digital pedagogy as not about using digital technologies for teaching, and rather about approaching those tools from a critical pedagogical perspective. So it is as much about using digital tools thoughtfully as it is about deciding when not to use digital tools and about paying attention to the impact of digital tools on learning. I became interested in how digital pedagogy can be deployed to encourage critical thinking about information resources, specifically library resources. In my role as a librarian at Rhode Island College, I'm a liaison to multiple departments, mostly in the humanities. I also make decisions about the various online platforms that we provide access to through the library, including the commercial library databases, which you might call bibliographic databases like PsycInfo or MLA International Bibliography. Digital reference shelf, we have many digital reference platforms, but I also include Wikipedia in this category. Digital archives that may be produced by other institutions, but also home developed locally through your own institution, and also digital libraries and repositories. It's important to ask questions about these tools, about our information resources, and the logic behind them, our assumptions about them, because it's part of information literacy, and it's also a part of students learning how to become resourceful, to use one tool for one thing and another tool for another thing, and to think about how to gain access to information when they no longer have access to these very specific tools. Let me go back 1 second. And then to further tie this in with today's talk, library resources are anti-anxiety producing for several reasons. At a resource-strapped institution like my own, when our faculty and when I use library resources for digital humanities projects, we're using tools that are already available. So there's no cost, or the cost is already built in to the library budget. The bill has already been paid. Students are likely to reuse these platforms throughout their academic programs. So if they're using a database in their major to do a digital humanities project, chances are pretty good they're learning about the tool, they're learning how to be critical of the tool, and they will use it again and again as they go through the academic levels at the college. So there's great value in developing a robust understanding of who builds these tools, how they function, their strengths and weaknesses. And then if the tool is locally produced, like a digital archive, there is value in having students provide feedback about the tool, and also maybe to correct data that's in the tool, which is something that I'll go over today. Okay. Because of time, I'll only take you through an example of how I use digital pedagogy in my own course. So I teach a first-year seminar. It's focused on the direct study of library collections as material culture. It takes principles of sort of like object-based learning from museums, and it applies that to print collections in the library, digital collections, objects of all kinds, artworks, basically anything under the roof of the library I consider fair game for study in this course. Mostly the students work with physical objects, but for their final assignment this fall, the students worked with a digital collection, the Rhode Island Postcard Collection. They selected and interpreted some digital objects from that collection, and then they put together a hypothetical proposal for how they would present their research using a social media platform. Okay. Open up a few things here. Okay. So I'll start with the product of this assignment, which is an Instagram post. We have a guest author here. His name is Jonathan Oliveira. He's Rhode Island College class of 2022, and he participated in a series of Throwback Thursday posts featuring images from the Rhode Island Postcard Collection that drew on research that he had conducted for the class. And I'm just going to read the post to you. And actually, maybe I'll start with both images. This is the Bagnati Fountain in Burnsider Park in downtown Providence. And then the second image is a clock tower at Brown University. Jonathan writes, hold on one second. Here we go. He says the Bagnati Fountain and the Carrie Brown Memorial Tower were both donated to the city in remembrance of Carrie Brown Bagnati. They were donated by her husband, Paul, an Italian count and diplomat. The two traveled all over Europe together for Mr. Bagnati's work. But in 1893, Carrie died due to lung disease after having the flu. This left her husband brokenhearted, and while grieving, he decided to create 2 memorials to remember his wife in her hometown of Providence. He commissioned the Bagnati Fountain located in Burnsider Park. Completed in 1901. It is comprised of 4 bronze figures that represent the struggles of life. The second monument was the clock tower located at Brown University. And then he selected some hashtags that would be appropriate for the post and that connect with some other posts that are on Instagram. And there's also information here about the entire series. He actually, in class, had titled his social media strategy Memorials Made for Love, which was just so romantic. So I started the Throwback Thursday series on Valentine's Day of 2019 because I thought it would really, it would appeal to the lover in all of us. And it was wildly popular, and he was very proud to show off his work in this way. So I'd like to go back a few steps to just talk a little bit about how how the library was able to feature such an Instagram post. And it really began with an assignment where I asked students to look at a recently digitized collection of postcards called the Rhode Island Postcard Collection. It was donated in 2017 by a former staff member at Rhode Island College and digitized in-house by our Digital Initiatives Department. The students were asked to explore the collection, which has over 700 images as part of it, and to develop a theme such as Rhode Island hospitals or amusements or beaches, and to select 2 postcards for further research. The project culminated in a presentation during which each student presented a social media strategy, including justifications for their choice of platform, thinking about who the audience of Twitter might be versus Facebook versus Instagram as part of their decision making, and then also meaningful hashtags that actually help you to discover other materials through social media rather than like funny or sarcastic hashtags, which are dead ends, and not truly in the descriptive vein of what hashtags should do. So with that charge, the students also had an assignment where, well, hold on one second. Then after they had completed the assignment, let me back up one second. I should mention that like the majority of our students are from Rhode Island. I haven't talked at all about Rhode Island College, but we're 7,000 undergraduates, public institution, and in my first year seminar of 19 students, only 1 student was an out-of-state student. So the students feel really comfortable with the images and the content of the collection because they're going to see places that are familiar to them. The collection is hosted in Art Store, which is a platform that they'll probably use in their other classes. Okay, let me go back here. Let's take a look at Exchange Place. Let's see. Oh, I only have 5 minutes. So the students had a reading about postcards, the golden age of postcards, and the assignment was called Postcards, Social Media of Their Time, because to have students understand how postcards function and what meaning they had to people, we talked about them as being a form of social media at that time. They contained mundane messages between people. They were rather inexpensive. They are the equivalent of a text message. They might have messages like, Mom is sick, or I'm bored at work. And then people would toss them in the garbage can, right? So the students learned about postcards and then had to go beyond sort of a grab and go use of library collections. So they were not to go into this, platform and just grab 2 postcards and then start conducting their research. Instead, they were asked to evaluate and sort of strategically explore the online collection. So what does the platform tell us about the origins of the collection? What information is left out about these items that might be helpful? How many items were digitized? Which parts of the postcards were digitized? And they realized, oh, the back sides are not digitized, so I actually can't see any of the messages or the correspondence between people, and maybe that would be valuable. What metadata, right, the descriptive metadata supplied for each postcard, does the metadata appear to be accurate? And in a lot of cases it wasn't, because I knew going into this that student workers had supplied much of the metadata for this collection at our resource-strapped institution. So students had the opportunity to correct the metadata, and during their presentations, I had the digital initiatives coordinator in the room, and he was able to start to take notes as to how he could go in there and correct some spelling and some dates and some locations that had been associated with the cards. And then what time period is covered by the postcards in the collection. The students visited the Digital Initiatives Lab. They learned about copyright and public domain. They had a presentation from our Digital Initiatives coordinator about how these collections go online. And all of this culminated in a discussion of print versus digital collections and the advantages and disadvantages of using each in our research. This question, are we allowed to be critical, was raised by a student in my class during this discussion, and she was actually referring to our visit to special collections earlier in the semester where students handled objects there. She wanted to talk about the fact that she felt that the physical collections were virtually inaccessible to students. They didn't know what was there. They didn't feel they could go into the archives and just ask to look at stuff. They felt very constrained in terms of time for handling objects. And this really drew us into a conversation about the qualities of digital collections. And we came up with a list of the advantages. For instance, digital objects are easier to access and share. They can be made publicly available if copyright has expired. The metadata can provide some information about the object, and also there's information about how to cite the object in your research when you are looking at a digital platform. The students can review the material on their own time when it's digital, which is really important for busy students who work 2 jobs or need more time to review. And then students can share their findings with friends and family if they're able to put it into a digital environment. But ultimately, the students in the class really liked handling the physical works. And the fact that when you looked at physical objects, very important context was provided in that you're able to look at other parts of the collection, and an expert from special collections will provide you with documentation and provenance for the objects. So there was a nice robust debate happening in class, but ultimately what I would like students to come away with is the value of using both kind of collections or collections in all their formats and how there are limitations, right, to using either kind, and that we should be aware of those limitations in our research. So that is the social media assignment in a nutshell. And I'll just conclude by saying that this is a very simple assignment for first-year students. And I liked the use of social media because they had all used social media in the past. When I contacted 8 students to ask if they would be willing to share their research really through our library social media accounts in the spring semester, they were all very enthusiastic and excited about it and easily edited their choice of social media platform for, you know, real publishing on our library website. So I think it made them feel really good to share their work outside of the classroom. Okay, thank you so much.